Tonight we are talking about two exquisite hammer-fired optic ready guns. The Fire for Effect Shadow 2 and the Beretta Elite LTT with RDO slide, or the Rodeo as I affectionately call it. Are you ready? Stand by. Welcome back to the Humble Marksman channel. I'm David and I'll be your guide in pursuit of practical pistol proficiency, and this is a video that was much anticipated and much requested, comparing the Rodeo to the Shadow 2, so here we go. Now, those of you familiar with my channel and how I like to do these reviews, I like to establish a context in which we judge the guns against, and the Shadow 2 is, no questions asked, a competition gun, whereas the Rodeo is a mixed use. It could be a competition gun, it could be a service or concealed carry gun due to sort of the abbreviated grip length. So we're going to keep it in the realm of just kind of generally shooting, realizing that this is potentially a duty carry gun, whereas this is pretty much just a safe queen or a gamer gun. And of course, talking to my friends over at YouTube, providing you an education as well. Both of these guns are available as you see them directly from the gunsmiths who put them together. These are unmodified pistols, and I'm not encouraging or condoning modification of pistols in any way to adhere to YouTube policy. So the way I generally like to compare these, and there are time codes in the description where you can jump around to the parts that are of interest to you, is we'll just kind of walk it through bottom to top, talking about the frame and the grips, the trigger, the rest of the controls, the shooting experience, the reliability of the guns, the slide and sights, and the aftermarket support, and then we crown a winner at the end. So in the spirit of the internet, where we love to compare one thing to another thing, we shall compare these things. Here we go. So starting with the frame and the grips, this is a tough one. This really is. The checkering on the Shadow 2, as I mentioned in my review, is probably some of the best available in this segment. The grip length is such that it fills the hand properly. There's real estate left at the end of the grip. Whereas the Beretta does have checkering on both the front and the back strap. It's good, but not quite as good as the Shadow 2. The grip is shorter and my hand runs all the way to the end of it, but small-handed shooters will probably like that. But the Beretta has a broader grip around the back, and I actually like that as a feature because it makes the gun feel like it's softer shooting. The CZ, when you actually shoot it, feels a little harder in the hand than does the Beretta. This is like how many angels can dance on the head of a pin type difference that I'm talking about here. But it's not just me. I've let my buddies shoot it and they agree with me that the Beretta actually does feel like it shoots a little bit softer than the Shadow 2. So if you tie me up and held me at gunpoint, which one of these would I prefer based on the frames alone? I'm actually going to go with the Beretta. It's much easier for me to get my support hand on the Beretta grip, and that means more to me in controlling recoil than the excellent grip texture and the slightly longer grip. So Beretta gets the point for the frame. So the triggers on these guns are double single action, and depending on your preference of whether you're a trigger prepper or a trigger slapper is going to affect your decision on this gun. So the double action on both these guns is pretty good, not bad at all. About a pound lighter on the CZ at about 5 pounds, whereas this is at about 6 pounds. However, the trigger pull is exceptionally linear on the Beretta, where I actually prefer the double despite being heavier on the Beretta than the CZ. In single action, the triggers are notably different, and this is where the slapping versus prepping thing comes in. If you notice the character of the trigger on the CZ, it's basically the sear and hammer are fully engaged. There's a little bit of wiggle, but that's it. Whereas the Beretta, based on its design, is going to have a little bit of take up. But the wall on the Beretta is much harder. It's much easier to stage the trigger based on the little bit of prep you have to do. So I find that it's easier to prep the trigger with the Beretta than it is the Shadow 2. They are both excellent guns, and honestly, I'm just going to give a check to both of them because the triggers are great. It's really going to come down to your preference. Bringing us down to the rest of the controls, in this we're going to have our mag release, our slide stop, and our safety decocker. Now the Shadow 2 does not have a decocker, which means you're going to have to lower the hammer on a live round to start with hammer down in competition, which some people don't like to do. Whereas the Beretta has slide ride controls that'll actually drop the hammer very safely, and it is a decocker only. So at make ready, it's a little bit easier with the Beretta, but it's not that big a deal once you practice with the CZ. Now the safeties on the CZ are very slim and they're basically non-functioning, which is what you want for a double action gun, which this affectionately is. So rating these based around a competition gun, I would say that the safeties are maybe a little bit nicer on the CZ, but if we're talking about a home defense or duty gun, the decocker on the Beretta is certainly the way to go. So I'll give them both a check for the safety and decocker. Bringing us to the slide stop. The slide stop on the CZ is large and is what holds the gun together, and you have to take it out of the frame to take the gun apart, whereas the slide stop is easier to reach with your strong hand thumb on the Beretta if you're right-handed, and those are the only hands that matter on the Beretta. So if you make me pick between the two, I'm going to pick the Beretta slide stop. I can drop the Beretta slide without altering my firing grip, and I can't do that on the CZ. So I'm giving it to the Beretta for the slide stop. Bringing us to the mag release, the Shadow 2 has a paddle style mag release that's quite large, and the Beretta also has an enlarged magazine release as opposed to kind of the standard 92 series guns. The magazine release on the Beretta is very, very good. I like it quite a bit, but there's something about this one on the CZ. This is my favorite mag catch, I'm pretty sure. So I'm gonna give the mag catch to the CZ. Bringing us to shooting, and both of these guns are absolute pleasures to shoot. The CZ, based on its super awesome ergonomics and very heavy frame, make it very easy to aim with. And the Beretta, based on all of the weight on the slide being very, very low, when you start trying to pin your ears back and race, this sucker is a lot of fun, and it behaves like a gun with a much lower bore axis despite having a higher bore axis than the CZ. The Beretta actually has less muzzle climb due to its action type and the way the slide is designed. The locking block action on the 92 makes the gun shoot much softer, and since all the reciprocating mass is closer to the web of your hand, it has less muzzle climb as observed on the Mantis X graphs you see before you. So the 10 shot average with the Shadow 2 on the Mantis X is about 5.5 degrees of muzzle climb, and they've got about 4.5 degrees out of the Beretta. And because the backs of the grips are much broader on the Beretta, it actually feels softer shooting. But I mean, guys, this is a very nuanced comparison. This is not to say that this isn't super awesome to shoot, because it is. It's just saying that this is a little bit easier to shoot for me in my hands. This is going to vary obviously based on what your hands and how the guns interface with you. But both of these guns you're going to find to be amazingly practically accurate. Both of these guns are known for their accuracy, and you're not going to be disappointed with either one. So if you make me pick one of these, I'm afraid it's going to come down to some more sister kissing with a tie, because these things are both awesome guns to shoot. And now we get to talk about something super interesting, which is reliability, which is not interesting to me, but because you asked. Both of these guns are reliable, provided you keep them well oiled. The Beretta is probably slightly more reliable than the CZ is concerned, because when the slide reciprocates on the Beretta, there's about 270 degrees for brass to kick out of the chamber. So it's very unlikely that brass is going to hang up in this gun. And with how high the magazine comes up, the direct feed system of the Beretta can accept basically anything. It's just like a USPS flat rate box where if it fits, it ships. And the chamber doesn't have a short throat where it will fit basically any projectile shape with no problems. The CZ does have a short throat, so 125 grain projectiles that are made out of lead, the coated lead round nose, they're going to have some issues. You're going to have to load them short with this gun. And the other bugaboo with the CZ platform is the trigger return spring. This is a part that will break and your trigger will stop resetting. It must be changed every 10 to 15,000 rounds. So from a reliability standpoint, the Beretta is going to win because the parts generally don't break and make the gun stop working like it's supposed to. Talking about the slide and the sights. So taking it first from the serrations, the forward cocking serrations on the Shadow 2 from Fire for Effect are awesome. They're brilliant, super aggressive, and very, very functional. whereas the front serrations on the Beretta are kind of the lower end of useful. It's better than not having them, but they're not as aggressive as maybe I would like for a competition style gun, which this is not a dedicated competition gun. They're usable, but I wish they were a little bit more aggressive. Both of these guns feature an optic cut that is somewhat revolutionary, whereas Ernest Langdon basically redesigned the way that the top end of the gun went together to get an optic to ride on the slide. And Fire for Effect said, you know what, how low can we sink an SRO? Yeah, let's go a little bit lower than that. And they figured out how to cut an optic super duper low on a gun that has a very skinny slide, and they made it work. So where the difference is going to be is that the Beretta, as you can see, has the co-witness iron sights, that part of the optic mounting system, and there is no opportunity for co-witness irons on the Shadow 2. So if you like a super duper low dot, then the Shadow 2 presents basically like iron sights, whereas the Beretta also has a very low cut, very close to the bore. It's just that it rides a lot higher from kind of the web of your hand. So if you like a low riding dot, then maybe you would like the Shadow 2 better. If you like backup irons, which I kind of like backup irons, then you would like the Beretta. So both of these guns have some very forward thinking how they're mounting the sights on the guns, and I want to call it a tie, but I'm going to let the forward cocking serrations of the CZ, let CZ be the winner on this one, despite the super lame Stundva roll mark they put on the slide. But I can't give them too much crap for that because they did a great job. Bringing us to the aftermarket. So if you're shooting an iron-sighted Beretta and you want military spec gear, the world is your oyster because there's a bazillion things that go with the Beretta with iron sights. With an optic on it, this is a new thing, and we're still kind of adjusting to that. So like holsters are going to be more difficult, whereas competition style holsters on the Shadow 2, you can't swing a dead cat in here without hitting a Shadow 2 holster of some make or model. MechGar saves the day for both of these platforms in making the magazines cheap and reliable and inexpensive, and both of these have gunsmith communities that will work on them, so that is pretty good. So the Shadow 2 is going to have a more mature market for the competition style gear, whereas the new sights on the RDO is going to take the holster market a while to kind of catch back up. So I'm going to give the aftermarket to the CZ. And that brings us to our mystery category that is full of mystery and shrouded in mystery. And I'm going to tell you about it, but first I have to talk to you about the sacred relationship between content creator and you, the subscriber. And now is your perfect opportunity to subscribe to the channel so you can get in on this action. So I will make world-class firearms content for you to enjoy here on YouTube. You watch this content and you bone up on your PowerPoint skills, and before long you're making some pretty slick presentations, eventually to the point where you get hired by CNBC to run the crawl during Jim Cramer's Mad Money Hour. And so while Jim's talking about whatever it is he talks about, you flash my logo so that all the people on Wall Street who want to ban guns can know of the good work that we're doing here on the channel with our world-class firearms content. So please guys, just go ahead and hit that like button. I know it adds it to some obnoxious list in your profile that nobody cares about, but it lets YouTube know that I'm making good content, and it helps them know to recommend it to other people. So if you made it this far, just hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, especially if you've watched 2 or 3 videos. I mean, what are you waiting for, guys? Let's take this thing to the next level, make it Facebook official. And as always, check out the stuff in the description, specifically the link to my Patreon page, where just $1 a month will get you access to 3 to 5 blog posts a week, where we can really take it to the next level and see where this relationship goes. So with that done, we bring it back to our mystery category. Our mystery category is, of course, hipster appeal. And obviously the CZ is going to win hipster appeal, right? I mean, guys who wear ascots like to use CZs, right? That's what the memes tell me anyway. But wait, hold on. Not as many people are shooting a Beretta, and almost nobody has them. Almost nobody's making holsters for them yet. The Beretta is the more hipster pistol. The Beretta wins hipster appeal. So that's right, I'm wearing a scarf in summertime because I have a Beretta. Deal with it. Well, bottom line, guys, you really can't go wrong with either of these pistols. It's really going to come down to preference. I think the Beretta is an easier shooter, personally. However, a lot of guys really like the way the Shadow 2s handle. The Beretta trigger, for me, works better because it is more of a prepping style trigger, and the double action is just a little bit more linear and easier for me to predict. Whereas the Shadow 2 is better set up for kind of trigger slapping, and there was a time where I favored this style of trigger. But prior to even switching to the Beretta, I kind of started trigger prepping, so this trigger works better for me. And while I was bagging on the aftermarket for the Beretta, it's not as bad as I'm making it sound. You can get the stuff that you need, and I have no doubt as these grow in popularity, and I suspect they will based on the good price point they're coming in at, about $1,500, that you're going to see more and more stuff for the red dot Beretta. Another little aside is because the Beretta does have this open design with the barrel, all the crap that normally gets stuck inside the slide and makes the gun all gummy and you have to actually clean it, like that just lands on your wrist when you're shooting the Beretta. So as long as you wash your hands after you shoot, the guns actually stay pretty clean. So if you're somebody who doesn't love cleaning guns, the Beretta doesn't need much cleaning. As long as you keep the CZ oiled, it'll run dirty, so that's also nice. Both of these guns are excellent guns, and you really can't go wrong with either. Check back every Tuesday and Friday for more content on the channel. I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, guys.